Numerous peoples, such as the Celts, Iberians, Romans, Greeks, Visigoths, Arabs, among other native, invading, or colonizing peoples, have been the creators and sculptors of the Spanish or Castilian language throughout the centuries. But from what point in history can Spanish be considered a language in its own right? To find the answer, stay with us to begin a journey to the past and explore once again the origins of our language in a historical and cultural journey. According to estimates from the Instituto Cervantes, by the year 2024, the world has around 500 million native Spanish speakers and surpasses 600 million speakers in total. If we count those who have some linguistic competence or knowledge of the language, and those who study it as a foreign language, this continues to place Spanish as the second most spoken native language on the planet, only behind, thank you, and the fourth language with the most total speakers, behind English, Chinese Mandarin, and Hindi. Besides being the official language in 22 countries and territories, it is also an official United Nations language. The European Union, United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, the Organization of American States, the World Health Organization, the World Trade Organization, the World Tourism Organization, Interpol, the International Olympic Committee, the International Federation of Association Football, Fédération Internationale de Football Association, among many others. But being such a relevant official language in the world today, at what point did Spanish begin to be considered a language in its own right? Before the arrival of the Romans, the Iberian Peninsula was inhabited by a diversity of peoples, with their own languages and cultures. Among them were the Iberians, the Celts, the Tartessians, and the Phoenicians, each contributing to the linguistic mosaic of the region. The Iberians, who gave their name to the peninsula, spoke a variety of languages and dialects. The Celts, on the other hand, introduced the Celtic language group in the north and west of the peninsula. The Phoenician merchants from the Mediterranean established settlements in the south, such as Cadiz, and brought Semitic influences to the region's lexicon. The conquest of the Iberian Peninsula by Rome began in the 3rd century before Christ, and marked the beginning of a process of Romanization that included the establishment of Latin as the dominant language. The Latin that the Romans brought to the peninsula was not uniform. It ranged from classical Latin, used in literature and by the elite, to vulgar Latin, spoken by Roman soldiers and settlers. Over time, vulgar Latin began to absorb words and usages from the indigenous languages, creating an evolving prototype of a Hispanic Latin that was already starting to become distinctive. With the fall of the Roman Empire in the 5th century, the Iberian Peninsula was invaded by Germanic peoples, such as the Visigoths, who brought Germanic as an invading language. Although Latin remained the dominant language, these Germanic influences became integrated into the lexicon of Hispanic Latin, especially in fields such as war and administration. During this period of relative isolation and decentralization, the spoken Latin in the peninsula began to diverge into various dialects, laying the foundations for the Romance languages of the peninsula. Among them, Castilian, Catalan, Galician, Asturian, Aragonese, and Portuguese. This fragmentation of Latin slowly began to evolve into Proto-Romance Castilian, which originated in the region that gave rise to the Kingdom of Castile, and that little by little would expand to other parts of the peninsula. With this, it can be said that the first version of Castilian was born between the 6th and 9th centuries, which consisted not only of vulgar Latin, but also of Greek, Germanic, and Celtic influences. But this first version was nothing more than a pale draft of modern Castilian. Before continuing, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and activate the bell to be notified when there's a new video. The conquest of the Iberian Peninsula by the Muslims in the 8th century introduced a new layer of linguistic complexity. For nearly 7 centuries of Muslim presence, Arabic became a language of influence in science, philosophy, poetry, and administration throughout much of the peninsula. In this period of coexistence and conflict, known as the Reconquista, Castilian absorbed numerous words from Arabic, especially in fields such as agriculture, science, architecture, and daily life. Little by little, the Castilian dialect was consolidating its characteristic structure, and by the end of the 10th century, it already had its own defined identity, and it wouldn't be long before it became a language. For this last part, the intervention of King Alfonso X the Wise was crucial. Alfonso X was a king of Castile from 1252 to 1284, and his decisions in the kingdom were the key to promoting Spanish as the official language. At the moment when he became king, Castilian was just one more Romance dialect among the many spoken in the region, and Latin was the predominant language for official documents and written texts. Alfonso X, understanding the importance of unifying his kingdom under a single language and making it more accessible to his subjects, he decided to elevate the status of Castilian, since it was his own native dialect, and founded the School of Translators of Toledo, a center where scholars from around the world, Christians, Muslims, and Jews, gathered to translate classical Arabic and Hebrew works into Castilian. Castilian of Castile emerged. This effort not only enriched Castilian with a vast technical and scientific vocabulary, but also positioned the language as a vehicle for scientific and literary knowledge. In this way, if one had to identify a century for the birth of Castilian as a language, it would be right here in the 13th century, although this generalization remains a controversial topic among linguists. Documents with traces of primitive Castilian date to the 9th century, but many still don't consider these true Castilian. Alfonso X was a patron of the arts and sciences, and under his rule, numerous literary, historical, and astronomical works were produced in Castilian. This includes the Cantigas de Santa Maria, a collection of poems and songs in praise of the Virgin Mary, and the Lapidario, a text about the properties of precious stones. These works not only spread the use of Castilian, but also enriched the language with new vocabulary and expressive forms. However, for the newly promoted Castilian, there was still a way to go, since the division of kingdoms on the peninsula prevented its spread. But this was resolved a few hundred years later, during the 15th century, when the Catholic monarchs Isabel of Castile and Fernando of Aragon achieved the unification of the kingdoms. This led to the Castilian dialect gaining greater acceptance, as it coincided with the end of the Reconquista in 1492, at which point the new monarchs imposed Castilian as the official language of their kingdom. From that moment on, the Castilian language began an unprecedented era of expansion, reaching the Philippines and other island territories in the Pacific Ocean, and mainly the Americas and the Caribbean, where it would arrive to stay indefinitely. From the conquest of America, linguistically speaking, there remained a broad lexical portfolio where countless new words were incorporated, such as tomato and chocolate, and thus sealing the final form that Spanish has had up to the present day. And that's all for today. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to this channel. I also invite you to turn on the notification bell so you'll know when there's a new video. See you soon.